My name is Mary Mates. I am the Business Programs Coordinator at Hennepin County and Hennepin County's point of contact for CEO Next Business Institute. Thank you for joining us today for today's CEO Forum. The CEO Forum is one of 3 lines of services supporting CEOs through CEO Next Business Institute. In addition to today's presentation, CEOs engage in peer-to-peer learning and up to 40 hours of individualized research and organizational support for their businesses. CEO Next Business Institute is a regional partnership funded by Hennepin, Ramsey, Scott, Carver, and Dakota counties in partnership with the Edward Lowe Foundation. This program is also supported by our community partners, Frederickson and Byron and Insperity. And I'd like to take a moment today to have Kristen Boss from Insperity introduce herself. So Kristen, give you a minute to share, to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Mary. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day for those that are Irish and those that are Irish at heart, right? Isn't everybody a little bit Irish on this day? I'm Kristen Boss with Insperity. I'm a business performance advisor. We are essentially an outsourced HR provider. We take care of your payroll, your benefits. We have HR technology and a local team of HR professionals to support growing businesses. So super happy to be a community partner of CEO Next and welcome everybody to the call today.
Thank you so much, Kristen. We are also pleased to be welcoming our guest speaker, Brian Slipka, who serves as managing partner of True North Equity Partners, following a career as an executive at one of the largest bank-owned tech financing companies in the country. True North's combined family of over 20 independently owned small businesses has revenues in excess of $140 million. Brian's experience includes building a startup, buying existing, including distressed businesses, selling and exiting businesses, and angel investments in numerous companies as a limited partner and investor while serving on the boards of many. He is the owner of multiple types of commercial real estate, including retail, multi-tenant, medical office, and commercial. So we're really lucky to have him here sharing his expertise. So thank you so much for coming today. I'm also, and I see him in the waiting room here. I'm going to go ahead and admit him. We're also really lucky today to be joined by Commissioner Chris Latendresse, the chair of Hennepin County's Housing and Redevelopment Authority, which authorizes support for the suite of business support programming at Hennepin County. Commissioner Latendresse is and has been a champion of small business support efforts, and we are honored that he is able to join us today. So, Commissioner, if you're ready, we are ready to welcome you.
I am on. I think the audio and video just kicked in. So can you hear me and see me okay? All right. Thank you so much. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Latendresse. I'm a Hennepin County Commissioner for District 6, and I also chair our Housing and Redevelopment Authority, our HRA, which sponsors CEO Next in partnership with Ramsey, Scott, Dakota, and Carver counties. And it is a real honor to welcome you today. Every year, CEO Next Business Institute hosts second stage business owners like you as a small but important way to help you grow and reach your highest potential right here in our region. Businesses like yours are the backbone of Minnesota's economy. You produce the most new jobs. You're the anchors of our main streets. And just as importantly, you embody a promise. It's the promise that if you have a dream and are willing to work hard and work smart, you can build something that grows wealth, provides vital products and services, and expands opportunity for generations. And that's why all of you do what you do and why Hennepin and these other counties are here for you. I think it matters now, especially because our small business community has been among the hardest hit by the COVID-19 public health and economic emergency. It's sort of a 1-2 punch that's not only required business closures, but significant workforce shortages and rising costs that are hitting all of you as we emerge from this pandemic. And that's really why we're here today. This vital partnership between government and all of you really represents, I think, the best of what we can do together. Launched in 2012, CEO Next is one of our longest running business support programs, offering resources and peer learning for second stage companies. Nearly 100 businesses have engaged with this program, helping create or retain more than 2,000 jobs. I also want to just briefly highlight two other investments we've made through the pandemic, mostly possible through federal dollars in the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan, or ARPA. Nearly $70 million in emergency small business grants, and Standing Up Elevate Business. It's our newest offering that provides no-cost business advising and technical assistance on a wide range of topics. Something that if all of you are interested in, I really encourage you to connect with our team to learn more about. Maybe it's even part of the programming today. So on behalf of a very grateful set of county partners, thank you for your contributions to our region, for contributing to our common wealth, and for all the hard work you put into growing your businesses here. Welcome to the CEO Next Forum.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Latondras. And thank all of you for joining us today. We will have time for questions at the end of this presentation. Feel free to type your questions in the chat box throughout. If you know of a CEO that would benefit from this program, please put them in touch with me. We will be sharing a recording of the presentation as soon as it's available. And with that, I will turn this presentation over to Brian. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Mary, and thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner, those words were very apropos and exciting and inspirational when you think about why we're all here and what we're all about. And certainly my perspective, talking to all of you today, hopefully you'll gain something from it. And we'll be happy to field a lot of questions at the end. I'm going to go through only about 7 or 8 slides. But these slides are all hopefully very high impact in different ways for all of you. And again, my goal would be that at the end of this, you can take away a few nuggets that you can apply to your business to realize that next stage of growth and next level within your business and your professional career and your life. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, I am managing partner of True North Equity Partners. That's a family of businesses that all have varied partners and whatnot to them. I'll get into that in a little bit, as well as I spend a lot of time with 2 distinct businesses, which I'll talk about a little bit as well. And I think throughout all this, again, my goal would be just to have you gain a perspective from my story and hopefully have it help you. So a little bit about me. So, I'm a husband to Megan. We've been married almost 21 years. I have 2 children, Jake and Elizabeth. My son, Jake, is graduating this spring. We live in Shoreview on Turtle Lake. We love it. So we get the best of all worlds, I tell people, especially outside of Minnesota. We live in the metro area, but we are very blessed to be living on Turtle Lake, so we enjoy the summer times. Megan and I founded the Slipka Foundation about 11 years ago. It's a 501c3 that is dedicated to education, character building, and community advancement. So frankly, this type of event is very missional for us as well. This is us being a good steward of our God-given talents to apply to forums like this in the community. And like Mary mentioned before, there's always businesses coming and going in my world, but current portfolio has 18 operating companies. We've exited a few here recently, and we're in the process of acquiring a few here as well. So there's always a plus or minus at any given month. I am a trustee of a couple of different nonprofits, and then I'm a lifelong Twin Citian. I'm a U of M Carlson School grad. I grew up in Burnsville, blue collar kid from Burnsville, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to that sort of upbringing. When I look at more about who I am professionally, my background, I went to the Carlson School, had quite a few different summer internships, but ultimately finished my college career at Ernst & Young, and then went from there to PeopleSoft in the technology software world. And then from there, and Oracle ultimately acquired us. And then from there to TCF Bank, which had a technology finance group called Winthrop that I was a part of for over 14 years. The one thing I wanted to make to all of you here today, though, is as you reflect on your upbringing and kind of what got you where you are, my high school and summer jobs had an incredible impact on me. One high school job I just want to share with you is I woke up at 4:30 every morning. I got paid a ton of money in the early 90s to do this crazy job where I had to get up really early. But what I did is I compiled data from franchisees all around the country. And this is before even Excel was around. This is Lotus 123, for those of you who remember that, DOS-based program. And we would download data on a 2400 baud modem and compile raw analytics. And you think about, 30 years ago where analytics were, and then where analytics are today, and how it's an entire economy. And my point in bringing that up is that high school experience changed my life. That high school experience helped frame up what is today me managing dashboards on a daily basis and an analytical analysis sort of brain on KPIs and big picture concepts. And so that's something that, as you think about what's shaped you and where being self-aware of where your strengths and weaknesses are, that's a huge thing that really helped exercise those muscles for me. I was entrepreneurial throughout, though, even though I had the big company roles at E&Y and PeopleSoft and TCF. I was always dabbling in angel investments. I was always pushing for new opportunities, got involved in a lot of real estate, still have a lot of real estate in Minneapolis and in Hennepin County and all the counties that this program supports, commercial, residential, you name it. But I did get into some angel investing around the time of the recession. I'd had the pleasure of having some success personally with some of these corporate roles, and I redeployed a lot of the capital to these angel investments. And I was humbled during the recession. I lost a lot of money, and from that, I really self-reflected on where and how I wanted to spend my life as I got older and matured professionally. I gained a lot of experiences, had a lot of at-bats, both with wins and losses through these angel investing experiences. Two in particular, where I'd taken over some minority investment positions as an angel investor, where I during the recession actually took them over in a more controlling, managing partner perspective, and was able to turn both of them around into a very profitable, result for myself, and then more importantly, that my stakeholders and my investor members. And so that really changed my perspective and led me on a different trajectory. So while I still had responsibilities in a corporate realm, I started pursuing things more intentionally. And the one thing I just want to talk to you about there was the influence my father had. So my father passed away in 2013. And when I was spending a lot of days with him at the end of his life, he'd made a comment to me, and this is probably me telling him how I just lost a lot of money at some angel investment. And he made a comment to me. He's like, Brian, with the type of skill sets you have, you ought to be thinking about just coming alongside some of these reliably profitable, sleepy blue collar businesses that might not be very sexy, so to speak, but are reliably profitable. You could make a big difference in their culture and impact them. And so that kind of stuck with me. And so in 2014, I founded True North Equity Partners. I acquired my first couple of companies. One was a machine shop, and then one was a transportation company. And that really started the trend. Still had the day job, but had acquired as the owner a couple of small businesses that had a couple million in revenues. And were profitable, and then I put in place an operating partner to be there on a day-to-day basis, and that really set in motion for me what ultimately resulted in me leaving the day job in early 2019. I can't believe I even lasted that long in hindsight, but given the changes that were happening in the corporate realm, they wanted me to stick around, so they kept talking me into sticking around. And so again, another just checkpoint for all of you with where you've been as entrepreneurs and as CEOs. Are you at inflection points in the process or in the life cycle of whether it be your personal life or whether it be in the actual business? And you have to be very honest with yourself on both. And so for me, I mean, I give that inflection point as a key and pivotal moment in my life where I said, I'm all in. I left the day job, and then we really got busy acquiring businesses. And so that alongside going over to run Sunbelt Business Advisors in 2019, which is one of the businesses I own, as well as starting Honor Capital in 2020, and a lot of other companies as well as we've acquired. It's worthwhile to note a lot of my passion and purpose is driven by being able to give back and being a steward of my God-given talents and resources. One of my biggest mentors in my life is Tony Dungy. Our firm supports and sponsors, lead sponsor for the Tony Dungy Uncommon Award that he awards every year to someone that has demonstrated what it means to be uncommon in today's society. And what that really means is that it's not always doing what the popular crowd is doing. It's doing what's right instead of what's popular, and carving your own path. And I really think there's a lot of things to take away from Tony with the lessons he's taught me. When I think about from your perspective, what your care abouts are with me talking to all of you today, the thesis for True North Equity Partners and the True North family of companies is that we're an acquirer, we're a buyer of businesses, we're a holding company, and we have a buy and hold strategy, buy, hold, and grow strategy. We're different. We aren't your traditional private equity. We aren't trying to buy a business for a complete deal and then flip it in 3 years. That's not our strategy. We come alongside business owners who maybe be either burnt out or rusted out. I'll talk about that in a minute. And want to be able to have their legacy continue. So it's a very missional perspective of how we acquire businesses. In fact, my team and I were just out in Litchfield last night to look at a company, Litchfield, Minnesota, and we're down in Iowa earlier, and then we're over in the southwest corner of Minnesota earlier this week. So we're constantly looking at and talking to family-owned businesses that are reliably profitable, that need a path forward as a way to exit, and ultimately what will become is more of a family office from a financial and investment perspective. But overall, the companies represent about 150 million in revenue. There's over 500 people that represent these companies, and really those that know me and have been alongside any of our businesses, it's really to encourage, equip, collaborate, uplift. That is our mission that we try to live by every day. I'll get into that a little bit more on the importance of culture. And you guys already know a lot of this stuff, but you got to be honest with how you're doing. And again, if there's any takeaways from this presentation, hopefully it's, how am I doing in these areas? From a practitioner perspective, there's really two businesses that I focus and spend most of my time on, and that's the Sunbelt Midwest and True North mergers and acquisition. That office of mine that I own alongside my operating partner, Chris Jones, we're the largest lower middle market and then Main Street business broker in the upper Midwest. And we just were notified that from IBBA here recently that they believe we're the largest office in the U.S. right here in Minneapolis. And we actually come alongside business owners as well, but that's one of our key things. But the real benefit of that business is that we're the heartbeat of America, is what Commissioner Chris said. The heartbeat of America is the Main Street and lower middle market business owners that are driving the U.S. economy, that are waking up every day despite the adversity that they might face. And so again, from a missional perspective, I really see myself as being that advocate for small business when not all others, like we're very fortunate to have like this next forum, as well as folks like Commissioner Chris to be able to advocate for us. But we need more of that out there, and so I really think that that's a really key component with what I do with the Sunbelt and True North M&A space, as well as Honor Capital, which is a specialty finance offering that's a conservative complement to banks. So banks are great, especially when it's in this world of cheap money and all that stuff, but we all knew that would end, as evidenced by the rising interest, the Fed raising interest rates yesterday and indicating there's going to be 5 or 6 more raises throughout the year. Well, what that's going to mean is that the liquidity out in the market is going to start to dry up just a little bit, okay? And then it's also going to get more expensive. And so as that happens, I believe it's going to be critical for there to be specialty finance partners out there like an Honor Capital and others that can help. So again, from a practitioner perspective, industry perspective, you can get a good idea of what I'm all about. One of the things I wanted to share with you though is the market opportunity that all of us are in, all of us, myself included, right? If you look at this sort of inverted triangle, 93% of US businesses are Main Street and small businesses. 93% of them, okay? We drive not quite half, but about 40, I've gotten conflicting statistics. It's anywhere from about 42 to 48% of the US economy, the GDP, is driven by Main Street and small business. And that's such an important fact for all of us to be sharing with others out in the marketplace. We really drive a ton of value. And a lot of that's going to be transitioning over the next 10 to 15 years with many of them still owned by boomers. And so, when you look at valuations of your businesses and you look at what your potential long-term next strategy is, second phase, third phase, fourth phase of your life cycle, it's just important for you to be honest with yourself on where you are. And the one thing when I was sharing with Steve earlier this week, he thought this was a good slide to share with all of you, because if you look at that line, that line is really a differentiating point with valuation, everything from valuations to how you're treated in this economy. When you're under 5 million in revenue, or you have a smaller EBITDA of under about $1 million, typically your values just aren't where you probably would like them to be. You're going to see a 2 to 4 times multiple of EBITDA at those size companies, and when you get above that, which is the smaller 7% of the U.S. economy, multiples get really, really attractive. And again, the reason I share that with you is because I'm not sure what all of you are individually striving for, but those are things to think about for sure. And I just want to make sure that you guys all can take that away from today's session is that getting above some certain thresholds is a key and pivotal driver for driving enterprise value. The one thing I wanted to also share as I move forward just about our businesses, you can see these core values I have on the screen here, but I was telling a few folks the other day, JFK, when he was president in the 60s, early 60s, had taken over and he'd said, hey, we're going to send a man to the moon. And, and the whole country seemed to rally behind him, right? So that's a good lesson right there, right? He made a declarative statement around putting a man on the moon. But what was fascinating is when he was touring NASA, within the actual organization that was going to be responsible for doing that, he saw a janitor earnestly scrubbing the floor, and he approaches the janitor and says, sir, you're working really hard. What's your purpose here? And he looks up and he says, Mr. President, my purpose here is to put a man on the moon. And so the key takeaway on that point is that the culture was around rallying around the greater initiative, the greater goal. And so just be honest with yourself when you think about businesses, the businesses that you're running and leading. Do you have every role aligned and rowing towards that same goal? Because that's alignment, and so much of alignment has to do with these core values that we really press upon within my family of companies, and that's servant leadership. Servant leadership. A lot of that's come from my Tony Dungy mentoring me and really helping equip me as I've gotten older and as I've added businesses to the mix. We really want to promote and enhance the well-being of everyone around us, right? And that's a actions speak louder is a really big thing for us. Actions really trump any sort of words that can be said about like, hey, here's what we stand for. Well, that's great, but what actions are you doing to validate that? The mentor leader sort of a mantra. I give you a couple examples. Two of my companies, one of them, young person was working for us, approached me a few years ago and said, "Hey, I want to leave. I'm going to take a job, I'm getting a pay raise." And I said, "Hey, time out here a second. Like, I haven't been able to spend any time with you. I've identified you as somebody that I think could do some special things. Give me some time." So I was able to retain him and put him in a new role that gave him some additional responsibilities. Coming alongside him and committing to be more of a mentor for him. And shame on me for having to get to that point where he was thinking about taking off and doing something different. Fast forward 3 years, he's running one of the companies within the portfolio of businesses that I have. He's running one of them, and he's in his 20s. And so you think about the importance of mentorship. Had I not come alongside him, and had my leaders not come alongside many of the other folks we have, we would not be in a position where we are, where we have a lot of young folks in the younger generations of the Zennials and Millennials that are now taking on leadership roles. That's an incredibly powerful concept, and it's all about mentorship. Being uncommon and unique. I mentioned that earlier with our involvement with Tony Dungy, but really being uncommon and unique in a professional sense has more to do with, are you doing what is right, or what the trendsetters, the popular notion of the day is? And so we always really check ourselves at the door. Are we just going along with the crowd, or are we really asking about, like, what's the high character thing to do here? Okay, and that's a really big deal, and that extends into what we do with our profits from a charitable and missional perspective. So those are all key core values. The last one is execution. We're all professionals. Ultimately the expectation is to produce, and so there's a high to whom much is given, much is required, and so we really do demand execution, and check our egos at the door, and let's go to work. When I think and normally, guys, I got to tell you, normally I'd probably be stopping and asking you guys for questions, but I know we're going to have questions at the end, so I hope you're jotting some notes down, and I look forward to being able to answer some questions for you. But when I look at what matters most, particularly with running a lot of these businesses, now some of these are cliches, but I'm telling you, if you live them out and you embody them, it'll have transcendent sort of results. Trust, and I'm gonna highlight True North Advisors and Sunbelt and the True North M&A companies, a family of companies. When I entered the scene in 2018, 2019 with that business, it was a super successful business. It had been really well run in a lot of ways, but it hadn't grown a lot. And one of the things that I really saw early on was the importance of my operating partner to be able to let his light shine and just let him loose and let him just run and go hard. And it was a speed of trust that we had together, and that he had, more importantly, with the team, that have allowed us to have 3x sort of growth in the last few years, which is again transcendent. But none of that would have happened had we not built a culture around trust at every level of the organization. And that's a lot about, and that leads to relationships. A lot of I came from a corporate realm where where we were told oftentimes that hey, relationships are important. We're a team. We got to be a team. And the distinction there was, we're a team. We aren't a family. We're a team. And I have the benefit of being in charge of privately held companies, where I take it a step further and I say, you know what? Yeah, we're a team, but more importantly, we're a family, and we view ourselves as family. And so to that point, we actually take it a step further. And I'm sure a lot of you as business owners can relate to this, right? I mean, you're with these folks a lot of times more than you're with your family, and your blood family. And so that's a key distinction that we say right from the get-go. Like, when you're joining our team, you're actually part of a family, which is unique. Inspiration. We have a culture of inspiration and positivity. We believe that too is important, because the accountability can go in a lot of different directions, and a lot of folks that have worked alongside and close to me will say, hey, no stinking thinking. I'm a big believer that hey, I know negative negative thoughts and negative energy is real. We all have it at times, but we also at the same time need to focus on what's going to advance the ball and what's going to get us through conflict and through problems. And it's through positive energy and focusing on the inspiring elements of why we're together and why we're trying to achieve a goal. And so I just, you know, as you look at your business, you know, and even how your morning's going today, you know, how is that thought control around inspiration change the course of your team? And then that, of course, leads into culture. And, you know, we just added Ben Utek, Super Bowl winning player, actually played for Coach Dungy. And he's our chief culture officer across all the organizations. And that's been a huge benefit for us. Which means we've made significant investments towards it. And we actually had a team meeting on earlier this week, on Monday it was. And we went around the room, all the operating partners and key leaders, and we talked about where we want to be in 5 years. And what was so cool about the culture that's been created is that, you know, to a person, everybody had some element of wanting to give back. And it got specific enough to where our team declared and came out of that saying, we're going to be giving away we want to be giving away 8 figures a year to missions and different nonprofits and in order for us to be of massive influence and impact in society and be a force for good. I mean, think about that. If we hadn't created a culture that's what we're all about and that's the byproduct, then not only would people not feel comfortable saying that, it wouldn't even be in their hemisphere of thought for goals. And so again, ask yourself, you know, what's the goal? And I will tell you, it's got to be more than just making money and having a straight up exit. It's what's the why behind that even? And that's what you got to really all of us be asking ourselves. As we kind of look to wrap up, you know, I wanted to do an extra hone in on servant leadership in particular. You know, these are some things and some truths that I've learned the hard way, being vulnerable, very vulnerable. You know, I've learned the hard way, and only through mentors like Tony Dungy and others have I learned to, and I'm still learning how to, you know, move forward. But you know, this notion that every day and every moment about your day is not about you, and it's a thought control thing. And having that servant-based perspective, if you help people, success will follow. And that's really a cultural creed that has developed, and that's a commitment we all have to openly talk about early, often, and ongoing. Is this notion about it's not about me, and I'll be the first to admit that I'm one of the people that I'm talking to. I'm talking to myself here a lot of the time. And maintain that unselfish motive. The stewardship of resources. You know, at the end of the day, we're all gonna pass away from this earth, and so we aren't gonna be able to take any of that with us. So really, having this stewardship of what we're creating mindset, that what we are creating, we want to be a force for good. So it's not just to line our pockets. You know, we believe success will follow when we do all the right things. And part of success is being a steward of our success and being able to share it with others. And so how can we benefit others along the way? And that mantra is something I, again, take very seriously. And a lot of times I'm checking my own self in the mirror when I say this. And by me publicly declaring it to folks like you, to leaders within my company, to employees across the top down, all the way down to all roles in the organization, that's accountability for me to deliver. And so that stewardship of resources is a very real thing. But I'm also honest with myself to know that I need to throw that accountability out there to realize the outcome. And then, you know, again, you mentioned it before, but it's just helping others, success will follow. You know, the commitment of that and the belief in that is what is really where results will flow. You know, a lot of people will say it, but again, actions are a whole different thing. And when those actions start to flow, you see results in a meteoric and transcendent way. And so that's really something I hope you guys are all thinking about and maybe taking some notes on how you can apply that to your life. kind of my summary slide here. This is one of our logos with one of our companies, our internal creeds that we really focus on. And you know, bias for action is something I really love. And you know, in today's society, you know, with everything that's going on, pandemic and you know, cancel culture at times, you know, all that stuff, you know, having a bias for action is uncommon. And having that bias for action, I tell my employees, I will always have your back when you make an aggressive mistake, but and having a bias for action, it's when you do nothing that I'll have a problem with, because that's not part of our culture. And so that's, you know, again, that leads to the whole realm of helping people. And so a couple lessons learned though. On the left-hand side, you'll see these are some concepts that just perspectives, and I don't pretend to have it all figured out, but when I have all these businesses that I have stewardship over, you know, I don't have the benefit of wasting time. I don't have the benefit of allowing myself to burn a ton of time on some sort of activity that isn't clearly doing something to be productive. And so the notion and the lesson here is just, how are you doing with productivity versus activity? And again, be honest with yourself. Ask yourself, you know, are the actions that I'm emitting on a daily basis directly driving productivity? And ask all your employees that too. There needs to be a culture of productivity over activity, because we all are humans, and we all will through our thought control rationalize our activities. But are those activities being productive? And so again, just food for thought. I want you to all to reflect on that. The next one is replaceable mindset versus proprietary mindset. What does that mean? Well, you know, it's funny, when I was at school in the 90s in business school, and you know, I'd sit with a lot of these professors, and again, you guys can all relate to this. You know, I'd hear some recommendations. You gotta be irreplaceable. You gotta make yourself indispensable as an employee whenever you get that job out of school. And as I've gone through my career, I've realized, especially as a business owner, that just the opposite is true. Just the opposite. And as you see the millennials and Gen Zs really come onto online in forms of leadership, this is where they deserve a ton of credit. Everything they do, they try to automate, because they're used to everything being automated, right? And so they make themselves replaceable in effect. And what that allows organizations to do is scale. And so now there's other things that for those that know me know that, you know, the relational side, you know, I think leaves some elements to be desired, because they just aren't used to having those deep level relationships. It's a whole nother topic. But one thing they do have is that replaceable mindset. And so ask yourself, with all your folks and employees, if you want to get to that next level within leadership or within your company or within life even, are you creating and are you doing things that ultimately you can hand off to the next person and be replaceable, to where you don't have to be there, you don't have to be present. And oh, by the way, from a valuation standpoint and from a desirability standpoint of your business, you know, people that have created and are leading a business where they don't have to be the ones to make the decision are the most valuable and desirable businesses. So that's a big takeaway, guys, is, you know, have you created a culture where not only yourself, but your team members are creating and doing things that are replaceable in nature, because that's how you scale. So another good nugget. Focusing on displaced energy, and this is loosely tied to the productivity versus activity takeaway. But the one thing about this displaced energy concept, think about your day. Think about how you go about it. Do you allow yourself, from a relational perspective, because we all know, you know, as one of our core values, relationships. Do you allow yourself to have an hour-long fireside chat with somebody, or have you learned how to have the same sort of content and depth of relational conversation in a less amount of time. So in other words, reduce displaced energy. Accomplish the same thing in 15 minutes, 20 minutes that you normally have allowed yourself to spend an hour on, and have a lot of displaced energy on. As I reflect on my career, I think that's really where I've been able to do more with less, by having an acute awareness of what is displaced energy and what is not. And that may mean everything from the fireside chat I just mentioned, or maybe not pursuing that operational meeting that they maybe want me in, my leaders want me in, but I intentionally say no, because the reality is they need to learn to, ultimately we want to empower them to make the decisions on their own. So letting go, but then also it creates more time for me. So that notion of eliminating displaced energy. And I think if we all did an exercise on how we've spent the last 3 business days since the week started, as an example, I'm sure we all could find a ton of opportunities for improvement, myself included. And so again, ask yourself, how are you doing in that? No class system, that doesn't need a ton of description, but the reality that hey, we're, the janitor at NASA is just as important as JFK in that moment. We're sending a man to the moon. And so do you have a culture? Have you created a culture around that? Around everything from decisioning, the decisioning matrix, to systems and processes, to where there's not a class system. And that's hard to do. That's really hard to do. We're still learning how to do it with our businesses, for sure. We are by no means perfect, but it's this focus and emphasis on always improving in that area to eliminate any sort of class system environment. And then last, just green and growing, or ripe or rotten. Those that know me have heard me say this a million times, and I do sound like a broken record with some of my mantras, but green and growing versus ripe or rotten. Green and growing is that you look at every day as like, I'm going to get better, I'm going to expand, and I'm going to season some more, so that I have a lot more to learn. Ripe and rotten is effectively like, that's done. That growing season is over, and now, like, I'm still pretty tasty. And like if you're fruit, right? And now it's time to be eaten. So ask yourself, with how your thoughts are in life, and as your professional pursuits as CEOs, how are you viewing yourself, and more importantly than how you're viewing yourself, how the decisions that you're making, what is it? Is it a ripe and rotten decision, or is it a green and growing decision? For example, one of the businesses we're visiting this week, business owner was saying, yeah, I get calls all the time, but I just, I don't want to have the setup of that, getting new business and jobs. I mean, I'm just turning that away, right? He's admittedly ripe and rotten. Or another business owner, she was telling me, she's like, you know what, I really do want to do that work, but I just can't get myself. I'm paralyzed. I don't want to hire the people I know it would take to do that work. She's admittedly ripe and rotten. So again, ask yourself where you're at in the life cycle of your business. Other concepts, just grow or go. This notion, and hopefully some of the things that we've talked about today can lead you to some of those decision points. Is your organization at a point where that you're ready to grow, or do you just need to instead focus on another path of going? I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But the thought is being very self-aware of where you are in the life cycle. Are you a shopkeeper? I mean, is your business more of a lifestyle business? You're on the golf course when the weather gets warm, like today here in Minnesota, where you're getting ready for your golf season and you're going to play 40, 50 rounds this summer. In other words, your business is a lifestyle business, whether you want to admit it or not. Or are you truly trying to grow enterprise value? And so are you a shopkeeper where you get in the weeds on everything, or are you a team of teams where you're delegating, intentionally not getting involved in the operational weeds and letting go? So those are again things you just need to ask yourself. So with that, being honest with yourself, self-aware, leaning on peers and experts, those are just all things you guys have heard me speak on throughout the last 25, 30 minutes. I'm done. I'd be happy to open up for questions. Whether you have questions about my career, my, kind of where, how I do what I do, or questions around the mindset and culture. But I appreciate all of your time today, and I wish you all nothing but the best of luck as we pursue the American dream.
Brian, thank you so much. If you could advance the slides, or actually bring back the screen, we'll bring everyone's visual up, ask you to unmute and open up your video if you have a question. But let me begin. It's just uncanny how your lessons learned and topics resonated with the discussion we had this morning in one of the roundtable groups around the power of culture, and how do you build and protect that growth mindset and the notion of ownership thinking, getting people to think and behave like owners. On that topic alone, could you speak to how you've done it tactically? Like, I get that that's the outcome you want, but how have you either recruited to fill that and protected it and nurtured that as you've grown and sold companies?
Well, I mean, I think I've learned through one of the mantras of bias for action, right? I've never been accused of being unwilling to make a decision, but specifically having a culture around bias for action, and what that means is allowing others to make aggressive mistakes. Because when you have a culture specifically and tactically of allowing people to make aggressive mistakes, knowing that that their leader, the CEO, will have their back, creates a complete culture of ownership and accountability. And so, unless you're willing to let them fail at times, and making sure you can obviously mitigate those risks, but allowing them to fail and make aggressive mistakes and having that bias for action, you really have to, and you just gotta, sometimes you just gotta, or like, I don't need to be in that meeting. And that's a very intentional, back to a lot of the other stuff I talked about on, you got to be very intentional about that.
So for example, you've watched the car crash happen, and even though you could have intervened in the sense that you needed them to learn from that experience, or you just handle it differently after something does happen?
A little bit of both, Steve. I mean, I can think of one example on a business we acquired where frankly, I was busy with other activities, and I knew that one of my team members was, going along, the due diligence process was occurring and checking the boxes, and we were definitely committed to buying the business, and we ultimately did buy the business. But there was a couple things that, in hindsight, and even as it was happening, I knew, we're not going the right way, and I knew could lead to more expensive, outcomes down the road. And sure enough, fast forward, we buy the business 3 months later, and we're going through all sorts of things, from inventory control issues to some decision and strategy issues. And a lot of it was because I allowed, and I did not intervene on things within the due diligence period. But I allowed that to happen because the reality is that's the only way the team member is going to learn. And now in hindsight, that lesson, okay, it may have costed us, let's say, just pick a number, let's say it cost us $20,000. Well, that lesson to that team member is going to be worth millions down the road. So again, servant leadership, empowering, aggressive, being willing to fail, bias for action, all those characteristics played out ultimately and cost us.
Yeah.
But the lessons learned were far greater.
Okay, great example. Could you return to the screen so that we have all the names and faces come up, and then as people ask questions, just go ahead and raise your hand and speak up. Do you have that capacity, Brian, just to return to the co-host?
Okay, how do I do that?
Close the screen.
Sure, I can do that.
So feel free to post questions in chat, or just raise your hand and speak up, because there's a lot of rich experience and insight that we gathered there. Tom, did you came live there? Do you have a question?
I'm just curious, Brian, how you're going to integrate Ben Utek into the organization.
Great question. So Ben has been a friend of mine for quite a few years. We've done quite a bit of leadership activities together. And so there's a speed of trust that certainly has existed and exists. And we're bringing him into all the organizations, starting by getting to know the leaders. He's been on a retreat with our leadership, our operating partners. He started meeting one-on-one with the initial leaders of the organizations, and really instilling in the leaders the consistency that we've been trying to achieve here over the last few years already. So the good thing about Ben is the culture. There's such cultural alignment that him coming in and with that role, there's just alignment with what we're all about. And so tactically he's building relationships, and we're having him spend time with folks and letting his light shine in the different organizations. One thing I didn't mention, Tom, which was actually an important delineating point, is I have a couple of quote unquote white collar businesses, but most of my businesses are quote unquote blue collar. And so crossing those chasms are a whole nother challenge. And that's one thing I'm really excited for Ben to be able to build relationships, both sides, both elements and both types of professional realms.
So Tom, here's a chance to give a shameless plug. He has an interest in that question based on the business he's in. Maybe give him a 10-second snapshot of what you do.
I own a company called MASH. We're a sports performance company down in Eagan. So we're pretty intertwined with the sports world. And I was at the University of Minnesota, I think just after Ben left, from 2004 to 2009. So I know his name quite a bit. And my business partner's title inside of our organization is Chief Heart Officer. So I saw his title inside of yours, and it was pretty much the same thing, at least from a title perspective. So, but we're only one business where he's intertwined in a number of businesses. So how does that play out in terms of kind of the top level culture that you're trying to instill? Is there still nuance inside of each different business, the blue collar versus white collar culture? And how does that kind of play out in your world?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely differences, but what's so unifying is the cultural elements of servant leadership, of mentorship. Those things are transcendent across no matter what environment you're in. And again, I think that's where there's alignment with certainly bringing a guy like Ben in, but also just this other notion of creating shared experiences. For example, I'm having a team, enterprise team meeting across all the businesses where key leaders are coming together to hear John Gordon, another renowned, author, and to come and learn, because there's alignment there. There's cultural alignment. So making those investments, I mean, those are expensive investments, right? Resource investments. Giving up people's time during the workday to come here, to commit to that. Those are big sacrifices from a professional standpoint. It's so easy to rationalize, well, I can't pull so-and-so away from the business for half a day. And I certainly can't pull away all my leaders for half a day. Well, you know what? I mean, you can't afford not to. I mean, that's how our culture, that's within the True North family views things. So making those incredibly, costly at times, quote unquote, costly investments on the front end are worth, I believe, transcendent dollars on the back end. So and then creating shared experiences, because what happens there is everybody gets together and then there's shared experiences along the way, whether it's small groups or large groups.
Okay, Diane, your screen is up. Did you have a question?
Not really, but I really appreciate you talking. Because one of the things I've been focusing on is trying to get out of the do-it-all role and to make myself disposable. No, not disposable.
Replaceable.
Replaceable. Thank you. And so this has been really, really helpful to reinforce that goal.
Okay, great. So, Brian, if we could switch the emphasis to your role as an investor, when you're looking at growth capital investment or acquisition, into the portfolio of some kind, what are the value drivers, or what lens are you using? Some of which you've mentioned, but like what should we know as potential a landing place for that investment, or a potential exit? What are you looking at from us? What do we need to do better for value drivers?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think the one thing, as Diane mentioned, just the replaceability is a key driver for a lot of would-be acquirers of businesses. So folks that are looking to sell their business someday, or even just transition or exit where they can do other things, maybe still be the owner, but just not be around much. I mean, you got to be intentional about creating replaceability around every element of your business. You can't be the face. You don't want to be the face. Frankly, you hate to be that blunt, but you aren't going to have any transcendent, transferable value if you are the value, right? So it's that notion is real and cannot be stated high enough. But other realities are having your financial house in order, having clarity of and transparency around how you're running your business. Having tight disciplines around it's not about you. Back to these concepts, it's not about you. So that means even like a lot of business owners just charge everything through their business, a lot of their lifestyle, within their business. And then when they want to sell their business and then they got to unwind everything. And then you got to make sure, okay, what's really the core operating profit of a business? All those things matter too. Those are all a bunch of details, but other things are just relationship alignment. For me personally, I only pursue businesses where I can get along with the seller. And it sounds weird because sometimes the seller's exiting altogether. But to me, what culture am I acquiring, right? So I got to get together. I got to have a friendship with them. If I can't feel like I would ever have them out to my house for dinner, and a lot of times I do, or me to their house for dinner, like I don't think that's a good fit. And the same applies for even our employees and leaders. Like if I can't have that kind of relationship, man, that's not, not only is it not as fun, but it's not real. I mean, so I'm all about authenticity and transparency and just, vulnerability. I mean, being vulnerable. I was just telling one of my colleagues today, if there's one characteristic I just am not a big fan of, it's when somebody thinks they know it all. Cause like, there's a lot I don't know at all. Like I don't know it all. In fact, I screw up all the time. So certain characteristics on where there's fits or not, again, being soberly honest and not having hidden agendas. I mean, those are just such refreshing. I only want to hang out with people where it's going to be a refreshing environment like that.
Well, so kudos to you. Sadly, in the private equity world, that's not exactly the drumbeat, but I appreciate you saying that. I know we're up against a hard break at 1, but I did have a question when you started off talking about in managing all of your different enterprises, you've got dashboard, an understanding of the dashboard and the metrics and KPIs. One of the hard things that we have as we evolve in our growing our businesses is getting a reliable dashboard with the KPIs. Is there any tricks or any insight you've learned before we close here, how you've done that well?
I'll just a super blunt comment. Bringing in outside perspectives. I mean, and I'm not saying you got to hire consultants. I'm just saying, bringing in even somebody within the company maybe, but that doesn't necessarily look at the top of the house every day. I love getting outside perspectives. Somebody that's in a totally different industry. And this is what's great about True North is, I can pull somebody from my metal seal company and ask them about what do you think about this financial arrangement, or what do you, or vice versa. Somebody from the finance company that I can ask, what do you think about this manufacturing decision point we need to make, or what are the key KPIs that you think we should be focusing on? And it's amazing the wisdom I get out of that, because it's an outside fresh perspective. And if you have a culture of humility and being open-minded and not being a know-it-all and hey, help me, that is super healthy conversations. And I'm always learning. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I not think of that?
Well, that speaks to the power of being in a peer group. So I love to hear that the diversity of experience, opinion, and just thinking is a net benefit.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and two comments to that. Just, I'm in YPO. Been a huge benefit for me. Huge plug for like organizations like that, forums like this that are incredibly powerful for all of us. Also Traction. I do apply Traction to quite a few of the businesses. Actually needed to be doing it to a few more that we've taken online here lately. So I mean, there's those simple disciplines that can be transcendent. So you don't have to invent it all yourself.
great. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to let Mary make the closing comments, and I know you have travel to take care of, but so thank you. And the recording will be available for others later. Mary?
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian, for sharing your expertise and wisdom today. And thanks to all of you. If you, again, if you know of anyone that would benefit from this program, please put them in touch with me. And I look forward to seeing you next month.